going?
Yeah, keep going.
Yep, road projects. Road projects are limited to typically collector roads, so local roads, unless it's for pedestrian connectivity, are not eligible typically. So what we've done is looked at Karina Avenue. That one's a widening project to have pedestrian and bicycle connectivity between different areas of town. Project R2 is Jacobson Road. In the new OCP, it's going to be considered a future connection up to airport. So we are considering that one a collector road at the moment. Project R3 and R4 are, R3 is widening as well for pedestrian connectivity, and Project R4 is a collector road to the industrial park that needs to be surfaced to provide for additional development at the industrial area. Park projects, these ones are not eligible for commercial, institutional, and industrial because those types of developments don't use parks, and the people working those types of developments would be apportioned already under your different residential. So with consultation with town staff, we've looked at 2 different trails and then a public washroom, kind of a central location to service walking paths. Oh, that doesn't show up very well. This basically is just the locations of each project. Any questions on this one? Everyone should have a general idea of where each one is, I imagine. Let's continue on. Yep, and then we go into a calculation of it. So DCCs, you come up with your total project cost, you come up with a recoverable amount under each, and that's apportioned to how much the development is going to benefit from the project in question. You sum that up, take off an assist factor. So assist factor can be anything from 1 to 100%. And that is entirely a political decision. So the more you assist, it really comes down to how much the municipality wants to provide for development, I guess, to help development. Through consultation with town staff, we've chosen a 1% factor across the board. And you take that amount off and you have a total DCC recoverable for each project category. Then you divide that through basically by your development potential. So residential comes with an additional 218 persons over a 10-year period. And then there's equivalents for commercial, industrial, institutional that come to 55. And you come up with a cost per person, and then you multiply that across by your density of each development type. So calculate DCCs. Let's look at really just the key one is single family for Princeton. So water supply, almost 1,800. Sanitary sewer is the largest item. And then municipal roads and parks, you come to a total amount of about $9,700 per development. And we can kind of compare that across the board with different municipalities. And that's difficult to see as well, but Princeton is the top one. Clearwater down at, looking just at single family, which is the yellow, orangey color, 7,200, Karamia's 8,900. Most of the communities are right around just under $10,000, except for ones with very large numbers, and I believe Peachland and Penticton are mostly associated with massive water treatment plants that they're planning. That's why the cost per development is so high. But most communities right around that $10,000 range. That's the end. Questions?
Nobody has questions? Really?
It's overwhelming. It's a lot. And then for me, I'm not a developer, so I don't understand how it would apply until I see it, right?
Sitting on the mountain. Hello, everyone. Greetings.
Sean, if it was 3 or 4 years from now, we identify another project that we reviewed and updated.
Correct, yes. What you'll do is you'll have a reserve fund for your DCCs. That will build up over time. It can be amended to different projects. And that's common. We'll find that development occurs in different areas than we expect, and we have to work with the DCC to adjust that.
Alrighty. Unfortunately, Randy just missed the whole thing. Okay.
So just so I'm clear, my understanding on a DCC is that future development pays for development, and that it's not the existing residents that are paying for the growth.
Yeah.
Is how that works in layman's terms.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, development pays for development rather than taxpayers paying for that development. So this is what, I mean, that's this.
Other than the assist factor.
Yeah, other than assist factor.
And that's why most municipalities have a low assist factor, because they want developers to pay for it.
Okay.
And this is something the province has been pushing us to get done for the last 2 years, 3 years. Every time we meet with the premier or anybody in, municipal affairs, the first thing they ask us is what are our DCCs at, and then the last UBCM, we were pretty much told either get your DCCs in order or don't expect much in grants from here on out, because we weren't pulling our side of our portion of the weight is kind of how it was presented to us, is either get your house in order or don't bother.
And then just another follow-up, so developers will then just kind of tack that onto the cost of the build then, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll just pass it on to their clients or,
It's the cost of building.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're one of we might be the only one left in the province that doesn't have DCCs. There was only a couple that I knew of that didn't have DCCs. Everybody else has them.
Okay. And is there flexibility on when they're paid? Like, what are they due at the beginning? They do at the end?
Typically, it's right at building permit.
At building
Acceptance of building permit, you pay your DCC.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I did have questions.
Yeah, no, that's good. Did you have any, Joe?
There's different eligibility for DCCs too, so for people just doing a renovation, they don't have to pay, but it's all set out in your bylaw, and it's really mostly apportioned to new builds.
Yeah, so Carrie can speak to what's in the actual bylaw and what our,
Yeah, so if somebody's coming in and they're doing a renovation to their home or an addition and it's 50,000 or plus, then they're required to pay the DCCs. If it's for, the way it's worded in the exemption portion of our bylaw, it speaks to a storage area, so a shop or a garage that isn't habitable space that they're just gonna store stuff in, it's exempt from DCCs. The prices that are shown in the bylaw are per door for, unless it's industrial commercial, then it's per meter square, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So, yeah.
so it's really, it's focusing on things that are gonna put a strain on our systems, right? Not auxiliary buildings that you're gonna put your winter clothes in or whatever. It's not focused on that. It's on, if you're gonna build a house and the house is gonna, eventually put strain on the system, then there's money set aside to help alleviate that strain down the road.
So even like secondary suites?
That would
Yeah,
be,
can definitely.
Yeah,
Because we
and
do
there's
wanna-
provisions for nonprofit like BC Housing, affordable housing, senior housing. There's provisions for exempting that as well in the bylaw.
And it's really getting a reserve so that when you find that your systems are being affected, then that project proceeds, basically.
You have the money.
That's right.
That's right. So I'm hoping to bring this to council for first, second reading on February 7th. Then we'll go into a public consultation period of just a little over a month. Anybody that I am currently working with as far as development and projects will get a copy of the bylaw so that they have a copy and they can provide comment if they wish. And then we'll go the end of March for third. Then it goes to the Inspector of Municipalities for approval. I have already sent it in, and we made a couple of changes, or Sean made a couple of changes on their requirements for us. So I'm hoping that process moves quickly, and we should have a DCC bylaw if council adopts the bylaw. I'm hoping near the end of April, depending on how long it takes for the Inspector of Municipalities to sign off on it. One of the things to note that I want everybody to understand that we have lots of people that are affected by the flood that have been coming in and getting building permits because they were affected by the flood. They will not be required to pay DCCs. They already have their building permit either has been provided to them or they're in the queue for their building permits, so they will not be required to pay DCCs. And that's one of the things, if you have a development permit or a building permit that are in the queue, then right now, then you don't have to pay the DCCs. Until, if it's new and the bylaw's been adopted, anything new after that then would be required to pay them.
But not a renovation.
If it's over $50,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you're adding an in-law suite or you're adding a secondary suite or you're gonna re-reno your whole house and it's gonna be over $50,000, and then you'll be subject to this bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, no problem.
Good seeing you again.
Want me to hang around for anything else, or?
Yeah. Somebody wanna let Tyler know? So, because we had a sound problem at the beginning of the meeting, we did change the agenda a little bit. We're going to go into the 90.1 section of the agenda. And there is no camera because we're having issues with our camera. So it's only audio right now, and we apologize for that. And we're working on getting our camera back up and running.
Carrie? Carrie, can I borrow one of your pens, please, Mike?
I thought I was late.
Yeah, you can. I'll catch it, I promise.
Yeah, but I'm not
You're not late? Keep your mask off as well.
Yeah. So if everybody can sit down, and we'll get back at it here.
Sorry.
So if we have a,
Counselor?
Here, you said, excuse me,
Yep.
so you said, I caught one part where you said we're putting out for input or information on the DCCs. Who is that to?
Well, we'll put it in the newspaper, and I'm gonna send a copy of the DCCs to any developers that are in the middle of doing any kind of development or that I've had discussions. I'll talk to staff downstairs and let everybody that works here know that this is coming, so that anybody that's inquiring or wanting to do something has the information and they're aware that this is coming down the pipe.
We're not looking for input in terms of adjusting what we're doing.
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
No, the engineers have calculated it. We're not looking for input on that.
Okay. With that being said, we're gonna motion that we close the public for the purpose of considering the following. 90.1E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that the disclosure could be reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Seconder. Councillor Elliott. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll be back when we're done. Sorry, everybody. Is everybody in? Don't step on it. Okay, motion to reconvene. Councillor Gould, seconder. Do we need a seconder? Councillor Willis, all in favor? I don't know if we have to do
Gould and
that.
Councillor Willis.
What did I say?
Willis.
There it is. Okay, we're back. I have no idea what's going on anymore. Take a staff report, the 2022 budget. James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, so as everyone here knows, we managed to pass a provisional budget on November the, when did we last have our last budget meeting? I believe it was November, last budget meeting was November 12th, I believe. November the 14th, we had a major flooding event in town, a major disaster which required us to shall I say, add a couple of pieces to that budget. So we're back. We're reintroducing the budget at this time. We'll have to alter our usual schedule. There's a policy that kind of dictates how the budget operates. We were on pace for that, and then all of a sudden we're not. So I have handed out a copy to everyone here. As soon as we have the preliminary budget kind of satisfied for today, we'll have the first and second readings for the meeting on February 7th. We'll send the budget to public consultation. We'll do another video session on YouTube. Seemed to go over fairly well last year with a lot of detail. So long as everyone is roughly satisfied with the public consultation process and we're ready to proceed. I have the third reading on for March 7th and then final adoption on March 21st. By law, we have to have a budget ready to go for May 12th with a tax rate bylaw subsequently thereafter. It has to be into the province by May 15th. So those timelines all satisfy what we need. I made no fundamental changes to the budget. There was one change I made based on a capital discussion, which I'll review as we go through the booklet. I'll quickly kind of go back to 2021 and explain sort of the spending policies, our sources of funds, and how we managed to make our way through the disaster financially. And then I'll bring it back to 2022 for the proposed changes. So I'll direct your attention to the fifth column over where it says 2021 actual, comma, to date. These are unaudited numbers, so they are subject to change for 2021. Once we go through and reconcile the numbers will subsequently change. I also hope on February 7th to bring forward a motion that satisfy our reserves for the end of 2021. So we'll know exactly how much money went in and what went out and where they are all located. That would be my next step this week to finalize those numbers. So on November 14th, we had our flooding event. Our emergency operations center was activated. As per our purchasing policy, emergency expenditures can be made outside of the financial plan. That's also per the community charter. Under our purchasing policy, all purchases have to be authorized by the CAO or as designate. So that was either me or Lyle with Ed. So there was always 2 points of contact for every expenditure made. in the early days of the EOC, probably the first 2 weeks at least, we had what was called the response phase of our emergency operations. Response spending is all 100% grant funded by Emergency Management BC, so long as we file emergency authorization forms through the Provincial Emergency Center located in Kamloops. We filed, I believe, to date, we have 132 on record with them, totaling slightly over $1 million. I'll get the exact number here in front of me. Stand by. I had to reset my computer today, so that's why I'm not. Where is that? I don't think it's there, but I will quickly find it. One moment. I know where it is. It's just buried in the file structure. I know. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
Inside the mind of James.
I know. Nobody wants to go there, trust me. There it is. Okay. And it'll load. Little bar's halfway, 3/4 of the way, all the way. There we go. So to this date, we have approved in response funding $1,065,315.88. So that money's been approved by the province, that it will be grant funded, so it's money in, money out. It won't mean any difference at all to the municipal budget at the end of the day, except increasing it overall. So that was based on that. The second source of funds that we will have for 2021 and into 2022 is called recovery funding, which is provided through the Disaster Financial Assistance Program of Emergency Management BC. That funding is the same funding source that everyone uses who is uninsured or the residential property. Also for nonprofit organizations that own property in the municipality, anywhere that is unable to achieve flooding insurance has hopefully or will very shortly apply for disaster financial assistance. And that's important because there's a 90-day window on that. So I believe individuals or anyone applying for disaster financial assistance has until February 3rd. So if anyone's listening to this, I urge you, please, 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 if you haven't applied for that program, do so as soon as possible. For the municipality, it's a similar program, disaster financial assistance for local government. However, it encompasses all the infrastructure of the municipality that's not covered under anything else. So anything that's not building related or not response related will go into that program. To date, and we'll review that when we go over the budget, but there could be several $1 million applied for out of that program. That program is provided at 80% funding, so the 20% of that funding would have to be provided from the municipality. There's been several media reports of Princeton's donut hole when it comes to that funding. We're still anticipating announcements from the province or the federal government via the province, but those discussions are continuing at the staff level as well as politically through Mayor Coyne. The third source of funding is insurance. The municipality is insured with a building and machinery policy. We had 3 major buildings affected from the flooding event. We had the Public Works Yard located on Herald Road. We had the Senior Center impacted, which is behind the Save on Foods building, and we had the Community Services building affected that was between sort of on Lime and Thomas Street. The insurance claim has been filed. We are ongoing right now with the insurance company, almost daily communicating back and forth. At this point, we are 100% covered. The deductible for that policy is $50,000. 80% of that is covered through disaster financial assistance, which means that the municipality has to come up with $10,000. Right now, we actually have that in the existing 2021 budget. We have a claims and deductibles line item under general government, so that $10,000 should be able to be settled under last year or this year. We haven't paid it yet, so it'll probably be actually covered under next year's budget. In addition to that, there's also ICBC. We had 19 ICBC claims filed for municipal vehicles. Some of those are everything from trucks and dump trucks all the way down to, we have a generator that was on a trailer that would be covered under ICBC because it is a motor vehicle under the Motor Vehicle Act. So we are working with them, their replacement cost. So again, it becomes insurance, pays out the replacement cost at 100%. Any difference between the vehicle we're going to purchase and the vehicle loss amount, we would apply for disaster financial assistance as well for those costs at 80%, and so there would be a small municipal portion as well to be covered under that. That amount, I'm still waiting on ICBC for numbers, what their write-off amounts are. Some of it was complicated based on the fact that these vehicles are in the public works yard, and it's difficult when some of them are mired in the mud to actually go in and get proper odometer readings so they can give us a proper write-off amount. So ICBC is working on their processes to be able to get us the numbers that we need to finalize our numbers. So we do have numbers in here. They are higher estimates. They may shift, they may change. A lot of this stuff is very speculative at this point. And obviously the fourth portion of possible sources of funds is the municipal budget itself. We already run a fairly lean organization here, and we are working as diligently as possible to make sure that the impact to municipal taxpayers is as low as possible. Having said that, there's probably going to be a couple of ineligible costs or something that at the end of the day is covered by the existing municipal budget. To date, we've spent $1.124 million. That's showing online and on page 1, line item 400022. That represents the amount of money that we are due to collect from EMBC in the form of 100% grant funding for response. Any questions sort of on our emergency response financially and how we've operated on those sources of funds? Yeah, it's a very, very large undertaking. Just the sheer number of invoices and volume of things at this point, and just at this point, in addition to all the things that finance has to do at this point, because we're just ready to introduce the new budget and we have our year end and our auditing processes coming up. It's a colossal task at this point. So I'd like to thank Jeannie back there for all the work she's put into this so far. She's been toiling away with all the data entry and everything else like that. So we'll get there. We're pushed at this point, but we'll definitely make sure that everything gets ready to go for our municipal audit in March. I will direct you now to the document and just highlight the changes. We went through the majority of this budget back in November, and with one exception, I'll point it out when we get there, the rest of this budget is exactly the same as the budget we deliberated in November, with the addition of expected flood expenditures. Page 1, like I said, the change 1.124. The 2022 emergency grant funding comes in at $23 million, which is almost half of the entire budget, and about a $22 million increase in revenues. That expresses sort of worst case scenario. When we make a budget, really we will try and capture as much as we can in the capital plan. There needs to be a source of funds for those. We anticipate the majority of those sources of funds will come through emergency funding through the province. If those don't come through, then we'll have to reconvene and figure out amendments to the financial plan to make all those work.
So, James, I'm just
Yes,
gonna
sir.
jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So, the 22 million, that includes, so we were talking about what ifs, like Lime Street is pretty beat up. What are there any issues underneath the ground that we don't know about? There's other streets that are pretty beat up as well. And until the snow is gone, we won't know exactly what the damages are. So we're anticipating that we're gonna have repairs on some of those streets. So Jared came up with numbers with Sean, I believe, and gave them to James to put into this. So we're anticipating more than what we actually know that we have. So that's why those numbers are really high. It's not to be like greedy or anything like that, but we're anticipating, you take a drive down Lime Street and it's like driving down roller coaster road, like it's just up and down everywhere, right? So we don't know what the actual damage of that street is until the snow is gone and we can actually see it. So we're anticipating that we're gonna have repairs that we don't know yet, and that's why James has put them into the budget at this point. Hopefully, it's not as bad as we think it is, and maybe it's just, seasonal snow or ice or whatever, but we know there's damages, and we're anticipating even more, so. Just so it's clear that it's not, these numbers aren't like way out of whack, it's just, this is the worst case scenario, like James said, and this is kind of what we're anticipating if we have to repair all of that on top of what we already identified and then some.
And when we get to the actual capital plan, then we can break down what that number looks like.
No, you hope that it's not worse than you think it is.
Yes.
Good point, good point. Page 2, the only thing I will point out on page 2, there was a shift to the borrowing proceeds. Originally, $7 million was the number quoted. Right now, the current plan is down to about 5.5. We'll review the changes when we go over the capital plan again. Page 3. There's no changes to sales of services. Page 4. There is no change to license permits and fees, penalties and interest, or return on investments. Page 5. The only thing I will point out, insurance proceeds, again, 2.263, representing what we would expect for replacement of the Public Works Yard, settlement of the Community Services Building, and vehicle payments from ICBC. Again, preliminary numbers, those may shift. We can shift revenue numbers without an amendment to the financial plan, but there may be some changes depending on how the final numbers come out. First page of the capital plan is next. Okay, so the only change that was made, and this will speak to section 6.2 of our agenda today, the 2022, if you go halfway down, it now reads pickleball court at $25,000, funded by taxation revenue. The sport box has been deferred to 2023. The other change I'll make, and you guys can pen this in, industrial park expansion, down at the bottom, we'll up that from $315,000 to $404,000. And we will remove that amount from the land sales reserve for a draw and put it into infrastructure grants. Okay. Page 2 of the capital plan, halfway down, and I've tried to bold as many of the changes as I could. So you'll see that in bold halfway down as a culverts and lift station. Under the capital plan, that was pushed to 2023. It's been pushed back to 2022. Again, it's one of the plans that we found we had extra space in the $7 million project, and that's also a critical need for the infrastructure department. The water and sewer replacement project, I have zeroed out that at the bottom and detailed it on page 3. So flip to page 3. These are the additions to the capital plan since the November meeting. First one up is vehicle replacements for flood. We've labeled 652,000 for that as of this date. Emergency funding is roughly, insurance proceeds, we've guesstimated at 190,000 at this point, which represents $10,000 per vehicle on average. Our fleet's rather old, and we figured that's probably a good guesstimate for insurance proceeds. 80% of the remainder comes through as emergency funding, so that's through the DFA program. We would apply for that, and then 92,000 would come out of the capital asset reserve to cover any difference from the municipality. Right now, their vehicle replacements for public works are under rentals through recovery portion, so that's the 100% funding through Emergency Management BC, but eventually those will be coming to a close, and we do have to move on replacing our fleet in fairly short order, because eventually Emergency Management BC will cut us off. We don't have a plan for replacement.
I know we talked about leasing some of our fleet. Is that still an option, or are we just going to buy?
It is, however, with the money that we receive from EMBC, we'll be expected to actually provide a receipt for those vehicles, so they should be cash purchases.
Okay.
In the future, they can be leases.
Okay.
Public Works yard replacement, we have 2 million in there. That should also read and community services building. Some of the community services building will be covered directly from the insurance company, because it's obviously a repairable building. It should be, yes. So that 2 million is coming directly from insurance proceeds. There's no impact to the municipal budget. Fenchurch lift station repairs, 550. That goes under DFA. They will not cover sewer. It's more considered a recovery amount. We will try and put it under 100%, but we probably won't be successful. Well system disinfection and repair, 18,000. Again, that will, under the Drinking Water Act of BC, or the Water Act of BC, it's all considered recovery. There's no possible funding for response for water, which we discovered very early on in our emergency operations center portion, that anytime you put the word water anywhere near a request for them, they would throw it back and say no. So yeah, we do have to come up for that. We will try and put it under recovery, and the rest of the reserve will be taken from water, or from the water reserve. Daking system repairs, 1.092 million. Again, we've put 100% of that into emergency funding. We have had mixed success in getting that put under a response, and the battle still continues with them over daking improvements. We'll stay tuned on that one. Directional drilling, 570,000. That has been approved by Emergency Management BC under the Disaster Financial Assistance Program, so that is guaranteed 80% funding. The majority of that was already performed in 2021. That's a $1.1 million project. The remainder for this year is 570,000. So part of that will be in 2021, part of that will be in 2022.
That was probably part of the 7 million that we found, was it?
No.
No, it wasn't?
No, but it's the logical place to put it.
Nice.
Yeah. Skater replacement, again, 80% funding under recovery, and the rest would be under the water reserve. Road, sewer, and water rebuild. So this is what we were talking about the Lime Street and the 7 other subsequent streets downtown. 14 million is an estimate based on 20 blocks at $750,000 a block for excavation, replacing the water, sewer pipes, and paving over top and all earthworks. Like I said, hopefully we don't need that funding, but if we do, it's in the financial plan so we can exercise it. And the sources of funds is all emergency funding. So again, it would be dependent on trying to find the extra 20% from another level of government. I I truly believe that the municipality really can't absorb a $3 million hit to its municipal budget at this time to try and supplement 20%. So there are other options. If we're in dire straits, we'll come back to this board, obviously, and try and seek out another source of funds. But
GoFundMe.
yeah. Sewer force main lining. Again, some of that's also covered under the directional drilling part of it, so there is an emergency component to it as well. And some of it's also in the borrowing section that we were planning on doing regardless, under the water and sewer master plan. So that's why that's not at 80%, but it's 80% of the funding that should be eligible from the province. And then it's the breakout of the master water and sewer plan. So sewer trunk replacement has been substantially decreased. We're down to 1.118 million in the financial plan for that one. It allowed us to fund, like I said, the culverts and lift station, and as we'll review in a second, the Angela Avenue sewer lift station. But those projects are now in the budget, covered under the plan originally described. Well construction 686. That project was listed, I believe, at 717 from infrastructure, but part of that engineering has already been done in 2021. So that represents the remainder of the project that has to be constructed. It's important to point out that project is for the twinning of well 4 down by the Tulameen River. So there's another one on here, the last line item that I'll review in a moment. Booster station replacement, that's for the booster station at Warren and Billiter. Again, a lot of the design work has already been completed. That's been sent out to tender by infrastructure, and we hope to have a report to council in February on the progress of that. Infrastructure master plan update, 100,000. That was included in the documents when we applied for the loan. That'll just give us a good indication of what we're doing over the next 20 to 30 years. Angela Avenue sewer lift station. So this is a new one since we discussed in November. Did you want to discuss this one, Jared, or?
Yep, I can briefly.
Yeah.
Update on that. The Angela Avenue sewer lift station. So in going over and starting the the assessments on the north side trunk main replacement, we went ahead with some video inspection. This inspection actually showed that most of the area over there is bigger, like the pipes in the ground are bigger than what our maps say. So we're actually looking good at capacity-wise in some spots. Some spots have to be changed out still. This cameraing did show that the river crossing on Angela is a 6-inch siphon, it's called. It's not a straight main across. So with the siphon, it the pressure from buildup on one side sucks it through to the other side. And at this time, it's a 6-inch, so we're kind of nearing capacity. Adding any more development will put it at capacity. So the only way around this is to actually put a lift station and then directional drill back into the other line on this side. Yeah.
And then that line is also quite close to the top, or to the river.
Yes, yeah, the siphon, over the years, the riverbed has gone down, and we don't know the exact location, but it is getting fairly close to the river bottom. So putting a new line, just a straight line underneath, would actually make it so that it would be, I guess the line would be visible, and then it'd be like an interruption to the stream and fish habitat, and they don't like that, so.
So a lift station would pump it down and around and then up, so that we would be under the river deep enough that there would be no risk of it rupturing, and we would be able to continue on with the flow that we have.
And the fish are happy. Yeah.
What's that?
And the fish are happy.
They should be happy. So it makes sense, looking at where sustained in this last flood, to have that on the table moving forward so that if something like this happens again, it's not gonna get ripped out. All of our new lines are, what are they, 6 meters?
4 meters.
4 meters under the river. So we got lots of room before something happens. But with this one being so close to the bottom of the river now, you know, it takes one more event like this and then we're gonna have sewage in the river, so. When Jared brought that to our attention, it was like, let's get that on the budget. We don't wanna sit back and wait on that one. And you might as well talk about the next one too. Big one.
So with the recent flood event, our Memorial Park wells were kind of affected. So one well, water was introduced into it from overtopping, and the other one, well, actually both. The aquifer underneath was, I guess there was river water that went into it. So, like not straight up river water, but our samples would show that there was bacteria, possible bacteria in it, so that was directly influenced by the river. So with that being said, Interior Health now considers these wells not a low risk of being influenced by the river anymore. So there's a few things that we'll have to do, like one well is 30 years old, one is 50 years old. In order to get upgraded to this day, I guess chlorine contact time would be one, and that would be like $1 million project on 50-year-old infrastructure. With that, there's a possibility of another treatment process that could be another $1 million or so as well. This is all up in the air still. I still need to talk with Interior Health a little bit more, and we have a GARP assessment that needs to be done. But it's not looking great. So with the potential of spending $2 million on 50-year-old infrastructure that's not upgraded, we were thinking that maybe putting a new facility up on the bench by the ball diamonds might be better suited. Doing design right now, an estimate, and it's calculated to be, probably come in around $4 million for that.
That's all covered though.
That's the hope that we could put it through.
So by moving it up on the bench, we would increase our filtration time, and then we would also increase the contact time on the chlorine at the same time. And this would alleviate, we would almost be in the same aquifer, we probably would be in the same aquifer, so the quality of water would be the same, but there'd be more of that gravel to filter out any contamination from the river, and then the extra contact time in the lines would hopefully decrease the possibility of further or what do you want to call it, infiltration from the possibility of bacteria or other foreign things in our water system. So we're hoping that's kind of the way that Interior Health is kind of indicating us that we're going to have to go.
That's correct.
Unfortunately, Interior Health has been telling us for a number of years that this needed to be done. Unfortunately, that was before us. We've been trying to address these things, and Jared had a meeting with them last week.
Yeah.
Last week, and they kind of stressed that we need to get in compliance and we need to start paying attention to this. So, you know, as we all talked in the office, putting possible $2 million plus into infrastructure that's 50 years old, you know, it's hard to say. So we are going to apply for funding, and I brought it up yesterday with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Minister Farnworth as well. Municipal Affairs got us in touch with 2 people to help us try to navigate the funding streams that are available to us to get the ball rolling. Until this happens, we could possibly be on a boil water advisory until we can get this sorted out. So it could be some time. So, you know, this is what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting to have those conversations with Interior Health and find out where we're at, and we still don't know where we're at. You guys just did, what was it, another disinfection of the system?
Yep, that's correct.
So we're going to be waiting to see what the results are on that. But Interior Health isn't overly excited that we're just trying to disinfect our system and pick up where we left off. They are really leaning towards more contact time and the possibility of having to put on a secondary system. So we could be looking at major upgrades if we're forced to do that. So we're trying to be proactive here and look for the solutions prior to being ordered to do the solutions.
The level of frustration comes in, unless someone can correct me, the only infiltration we ever had was when that sewer line broke down by where the Indians have their, or what are they called?
Band office?
Have their building there, and it ran 300 yards down into our well. And we have lived with that. We never had infiltration before. We never had problems with our water. We didn't chlorinate or anything else. We always had great water. But that one time that sewer broke and ran down in there, all of a sudden, our water system is at fault.
Yeah, if I can speak to that a little bit too. This flood event has actually shown that there is infiltration as well. With the water samples that we've gotten back, they had really high numbers of potential coliforms, right? So that is directly showing us that it came through the aquifer from the river. Not saying that it's contamination, but it's a possibility of viruses or pathogens or something like that.
When the flood goes over the top of your well, right?
So we were able to clean that one out. Like we cleaned, that was well 1 that it went over top. Well 2 was affected as well, and that was just strictly from the aquifer.
Yeah, it didn't actually go into well 2 on the surface.
Isn't that
That's
funny
correct.
that unless we weren't measuring properly or whatever, because we never had that.
Yeah, it was a crazy event.
But lots has changed down there, like the way the river runs now,
Yeah.
where aquifers are gonna look now. Everything's different now than from what it was. Most of our traditional knowledge on what our river does and doesn't do is gone because of this, especially this last event. And the groundwater saturation rate and, not just from the rain, but how much water was coming out of the river has changed our aquifer as well. So it's gonna take a while, but we're trying to be proactive, and that's why Jared's got these on the budget to look into, is to fix these up and try to prevent a future issue if we can avoid it.
I'm not arguing, we have no choice.
No, I'm not saying you're arguing, I'm just explaining that this is why we're doing it.
I don't know how our river has changed. It's running in the same place it always was running and everything else, but the bottom line is you can't argue with them.
No.
If they figure it's required, it's required.
All right, moving right along. Okay, so I will move on to page 6 here. Get everyone else on page 6. There we go. Okay, so there is no change to page 6. Advance forward to page 7. No changes to page 7. Page 8. No changes to page 8 or 9. Or 10,
Sometimes you get through.
11.
Sometimes you get through to page 11,
Yeah.
and then you say, however, there's changes going back to page 6 and page 7 and page 8.
Page 12 is the next change.
I'm just impressed you got this done for today.
Page 12 is the next change. So you'll see a line item there that says November 2021 flood response. So under the 2021 section, the 1.124 million is how much we spent in response at this point. In 2022, we expect 2.1. That's the operational cost for recovery. So that will include recovery staff, a recovery building. It'll include some of the 20% cost share. I beg your pardon. No, let me stop myself before I say that. Hang on 1 second. Let me just go back here. I have all the numbers written down. Over here, they're all kind of in different spots, so bear with me for a moment. So, like I said, it has been a monumental task putting everything together, so,
He's not going there, no.
It's changing the page numbers as we speak.
yeah.
Randy's staring you down right now.
Right. I am trying so hard to get everything straight, and sometimes it's just, yeah, it's
Gonna
kind
add
of all over
page
the place. So we have, so we definitely have recovery part of that put into place. And then we have all the rest of the response stuff that we need to take care of. So that's town cleanup, landfill tipping fees that we haven't billed the province yet. There's there's various staff time that's in there. There's continued rental of equipment. We don't expect those replacement vehicles to be in from ICBC until probably September, October this year. So with semiconductor shortages and supply chain issues, there'll be a number of town vehicles that need to be continued to be rented in the first 2 or 3 quarters of this year. All those are eligible recovery costs. There will be some cost sharing, that's included in there as well. So, yeah, various odds and sods. I could put them in probably 15 different portions of the budget, based on the fact that we expect EMBC to come through with 100% funding on response portions of that expenditure. It's very just much easier to put one line item and bill to that. Last page, page 13, is kind of our summary of expenses, and I'll just update online for that. So our total revenues that will be put into the financial plan that presented on February 7th is $43.5 million. Operational expenses of $10 million, capital expenses of almost $31.8 million. Which leaves left over $1.7 million of transfers to reserves. The reserves have not been changed since our meeting in November, including $500,000 in DCC reserves. Thank you, Deputy Corporate Officer. She made sure I put that in there. And drilled me before the meeting that I had it in there, and I had it in, so yes for me. Which leaves the remaining unrestricted surplus left over at the end of the budget is $50,000, which is $7,000 more than we left off in November, because we originally expected to have $32,000 left over for the sport box. I've moved that to $25,000 in response to the request from Pickleball for a municipal contribution. So that's the budget as presented in 2022. I would ask council for a resolution to approve this budget in principle, pending receipt of the full-fledged financial plan on February 7th.
Motion? Councilor Gould, second. Councilor Elliott.
Has to be Councilor Gould.
What? It doesn't have to be. You can.
Oh, yes, it does.
Does anybody have any questions before we proceed on the vote? Councilor McLean.
Arena grant. Was there any date where that would be expected?
I talked to our arena supervisor today, and he has not heard anything in relation to that grant. Have you heard anything there, Lyle?
No, it's ICIP Green Initiative grant, and they traditionally take a long time or a while before we hear a decision, so I don't expect anything.
Months
before the
or-
summer. Yeah, months, yeah.
Okay.
No other questions?
The only other point is, this is excellent. This is, to me, is how it makes it so much easier for us to sit here and say, what trends have developed, what things have changed, and to be able to go and see what the history of stuff is the way it should be. Good job. Amy and Jeannie, perfect.
Yes, thank you. I know you put in some good hours on this since all this has happened. So
And personally speaking, yeah, I was a week and a half off sick myself, and yeah, a lot of stuff. So it was it was a monumental undertaking under less than ideal circumstances to get it done, but I'm glad I got something in front of council, so.
My only question is how a 6'3" man can twist your leg up inside the chair and call that
I was looking at that earlier.
I was a
Answer that, let's call the question.
I was a lacrosse goalie for 20 years, so I can maneuver my body.
Gary, you writing this down, Gary?
Because you were a goalie or what?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Okay, there is a motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thanks. We have one more thing to address on here, and that's 6.2, Princeton Pickleball Association. They've got a request for the amount of $25,000. CAO?
Yeah, so, as you saw in the report from the Director of Finance, there is an amount that's in there, so it's just subject to final approval of the budget.
Okay. So when do they need their letter of support by?
I think their application was in March, so I think it'll fit in with their timeline.
Okay. And then their last delegation to us was they did not want to be on a floodplain. Have we
Yeah.
figured that out yet? Because
I
that
don't,
whole flat's on a floodplain.
that's exactly it. It's part of our recreation study that we want to do too. The holistic for the whole community parks recreation study.
But they want to, they want in a letter that we're gonna give them a spot in Memorial Park for this application. But at the same time, they've asked us not to be in the floodplain. So I'm having a real hard time with
I pulled up the floodplain mapping and provided CAO and the mayor with a copy of the map, and it sort of goes around the tennis courts, but it follows the hillside
Mm-hmm.
down to the river, and it's all on the floodplain.
I think it's workable, like, as Gary said, the tennis courts are outside the floodplain because they've been raised up when they were developed.
Right.
And so I think, anything that we do would be to the present day building code, and so it would be raised up and out of the flooded areas, so,
Right, because the intention of the recreation study is to also look at the
yeah,
repair of the tennis court too, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, the study is done, it was done in, what, 1963 or something?
Yeah,
like that?
perfect.
We just saw actually a really cool, was that you that dug that out? We saw a
And the
complete,
river hasn't changed, right?
exactly, we saw a complete plan for that entire
I was
park.
13.
It had a quarter-mile racetrack, like running track and everything.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
So
Okay,
that's something I think that can, further discussion can be made
Yeah.
in regards to that. But they're looking for the funding and the letter of support
So it's in-
as soon as possible.
so it's in the budget, so once the budget's approved, we can commit to that.
And I believe the dates were final March 21st on that. And I'm thinking that maybe if we would be able to do a letter in support, but subject to the passing of the bylaw.
I think if we get through 2 or 3 rounds here, first, second reading, and public consultation, I think nothing.
Well, we've done first reading, right?
Yeah, if we get to third reading after public consultation and everyone's happy, then there's nothing stopping us from doing a special meeting and passing it earlier than the 21st.
So do we need another motion, or is it already in the budget? We can just move forward from that?
We can do exactly what Council Gould just said. We can pass a motion that a letter of support be provided, subject to, and that we provide the 25,000, subject to the passing of the financial plan.
Okay.
I would make that motion.
Okay, somebody want to second that motion? Second. Counselor Willis, any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Counselor Elliott's opposed? Carries? Okay. With that, we can adjourn. I think, I'm just double checking here. Motion to adjourn? Counselor, I'll give it to Counselor Elliott. Counselor Willis, second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And anybody listening, thank you for hanging in there with us. Bye-bye.